Happy Monday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and it is time for balancing the books. And buckle in because this is going to be a big one. A few things for you to know about this month's balancing the books. Firstly, don't judge me for what's about to happen. It was my birthday this month, so I did get a lot of new books. But secondly, if you haven't already seen my most recent video that I put up on Friday, you might want to check that out first. It is called Sims Controlled What I Read All Month, and it's what it says on the tin. I played a little game with myself where I got the Sims to control everything I read that month, and I got points throughout it, and I ended up with a number of points. Now's the point to go and watch that video. First, if you don't want to be spoiled, have you gone? Have you gone? If you didn't want to, okay, because I'm going to reveal, I got 13 points. I fucking smashed it. And each of those points basically corresponded to like a free pass in balancing the books. So balancing the books, in case you're new, is just a game I play every month where I add up everything that came onto my TBR with everything that came off my TBR and make sure those numbers are balanced. But this month, I'm allowed to actually go up 13 whole books, which is lucky because I think I nearly did that with my birthday haul alone. And instead of having to get rid of corresponding books, I get 13 free passes. Okay, let's go through my balancing the books. I began the month of June with 39 books on my TBR, and the first thing I did was to DNF a book. I DNF'd The Lonely Fajita by Abigail Mann. I no longer have it because I unhauled it. There was nothing wrong with this book. There was no big reason why I DNF'd it other than that I just like wasn't really into it. It's not my kind of thing. It was just a very sweet like contemporary novel about a girl who breaks up with her boyfriend and needs somewhere to live because she's kicked out of her flat, and she ends up living, she like signs up to this program where you live with an elderly person in exchange, I think it's free or really low rent, in exchange for like being a companion. And I could tell it was going to be a very sweet story about their relationship, but I just like wasn't really into it. It wasn't like written in a style that engages me, so I DNF'd that one. Then I read a book called The Hidden Girls by Whitney, which I also no longer have because I also unhauled it. I gave a bunch of books away to people I know on the Isle of Wight. The Hidden Girls was a psychological thriller about a woman, a like relatively new mother, who right after her baby was born, she suffered postpartum psychosis, and now we're like 6 months or so down the line and she started seeing things again in the night, and she doesn't know whether she can trust her own vision or her own like imagination or not. So like deeply scary thing to happen to you really, and it was really fun, really page turning. I found it a little bit over the top at points, which I guess is why it wasn't one I like held on to as a reread thriller. So it wasn't my personal favourite, but it was really fun, really engaging. I read it super quickly, and after that there was a big gap. I got to like the middle of June before I read a single other book. What I did do first is hauled an ebook called The End of Policing. This was one that the publishing company Verso, who is like radical publisher, they were giving away the ebook for free. And I was really interested. I haven't read it yet, but I am really big on abolishing the police and on prisons. I have been for a long time actually. It was when I was at university, so like 8 years ago, that I got really into the idea of a world without prisons. And definitely remember having like wine-fueled conversations with friends many a time, and it never going well because people tend to look at you like you're completely batshit if you start talking about that. But I'm going to link below actually to an article I read really recently about what a world without prisons and without police could look like, because it was so well researched, it was so well done, and it really shows the idea that like people who think it sounds idealistic and extreme, it highlights that actually our current situation is very idealistic and extreme. Anyway, so I bought this book, or rather I hauled for free this book, The End of Policing, which I'm definitely going to read because I want to brush up on this stuff and be able to talk about it much more convincingly in future, because in the past people tend to have just like rolled their eyes at me when I've talked about it. Then I started listening to an audiobook on Scribd, which was Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Gottlieb. I'm still listening to that, and actually it was only like 3 days until my book club. By the time you guys watch this, my book club will have happened. I hope I managed to finish the book by then, because I'm not even halfway through. I'm really enjoying it though. It's written by a therapist, and it's about her experience of going to therapy. So a lot of therapists go to therapy at some point in their career, and she goes through a breakup, and yeah, we get to see kind of both sides, her experience as a therapist, going to a therapist, and it's just made me really interested in like the whole thing. I've seen a lot of therapists and counsellors in my time, and I love them. I found therapy very helpful, so it's been really interesting to kind of get another perspective on it. Then I borrowed a book from my friend Izzy. This is You Know You Want This. This is a short story collection written by the woman who wrote the short story Cat Person, which went viral a couple of years ago, 1 year ago, and it was absolutely brilliant. So this is her collection of short stories. I'm really interested. I'm like quite hit and miss with short stories, but I really enjoy Cat Person, so that's a good sign. And then finally I read another book on my birthday, which is halfway through the month. I finally finished only my second book of the whole month, and that was Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And I'm so pleased I read this, not least because this was the book I'd owned for the longest. Of all of the books on my shelf, I just kept not picking up because I was so convinced I was going to love it so much. It was like a serious 5-star prediction that actually just gave me nerves and I didn't want to pick it up at all. But I finally did and I loved it so much. Absolutely was a 5-star read. So this is the story of two teenagers at first when they meet, Ifemelu and Obinze, and they are both Nigerian. They're growing up in Nigeria, they meet as teenagers at secondary school and fall in love. But then while they're at university, the continued strikes mean they both decide to leave the country and try and study somewhere else. And so Ifemelu moves to the States and Obinze ends up moving undocumented to the UK. We're mainly following Ifemelu in this story, and it's all about her arriving in the States and her experience of, in a way, kind of discovering her own blackness, because she says that she didn't feel black or experience being black when she was in Nigeria, and so she kind of discovers race almost for the first time as a non-American black woman, and she starts writing this blog with her observations on race, and it's really, really interesting stuff. It also really made me want to go to Nigeria and learn more about Nigeria. I've read quite a few books set in Nigeria before, but this one was so particularly about contrasting like an American perspective of Nigeria that it just made me really, really fascinated. And it's also a love story, so it's about their relationship over these years that they're apart and how they communicate sporadically throughout. It's also about Ifemelu's other relationships with people that she meets in the States, and it's one of those books you just want to read really slowly and like savour it because it's so beautifully written, and because it spans such a long amount of time you just don't want to rush it. You want to just be slowly, constantly reading this book. I wanted to be reading this book for like ever, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm so glad I finally did. A definite new favourite for me. Definite, I was right, it's 5 stars. And then it was my birthday, so I had my birthday haul. So first I got this book, The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas from What Victoria Read, the lovely booktuber Victoria. We'll link to her channel below. She's so wonderful. We co-hosted Books for the Brave together a couple of months ago, and she sent me a birthday present, which is so generous and so lovely. She is just one of the loveliest people actually that I've met through booktube. She's just a really, really genuinely kind person, and I'm so excited about this book because you know I love books about time travel. It's about 4 female scientists who invent a time travel machine in 1967, and then we also check in with them in 2017 and 2018 and find like what's happened. It just sounds great. Then my parents gave me 6 books for my birthday, which is very exciting. So first I got Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin, which I did read straight away. This one is translated from Spanish, I believe. It was longlisted for the 2020 International Booker Prize, and it's a kind of Black Mirror-esque dystopian book. Very strange book, which I always really enjoy. So in this world, there are these little toys that have been invented called kantukis, where you can either buy the little toy and it has a camera in its eye and it's linked to someone else, some random stranger, you have no idea who, and they could be anywhere in the world, and they can control it. Or you can choose to buy the app, I guess, and be the person who controls someone else's kantuki. So then you get to look into their life and you have like a remote control and you can move the little thing around on its wheels around their house. So it's called being a keeper if you have the pet in your house, or a dweller where you dwell inside the pet in someone else's house. And people are kind of divided into which they prefer, but these things are like a massive sensation. And it's all about the little creepy effects of these toys. But what was really interesting about it is it's not about some massive, huge scale drama. Like, it's not like people use them for like a terrorist attack, or, you know, nothing massive and major happens. Just all of these tiny little breakdowns of individual people's lives. It was very creepy, and I found that scarier, I think, than if it had been some like massive global crisis. Very strange book, and I'm intrigued because people have said that her book Fever Dream is even weirder, and I think people like it even more, but say it's like very strange. So I'm very intrigued. I don't know what Fever Dream is really about. I think it's one of those where it's like no one really knows what it's about, they just like it. Okay, my parents also gave me He Started It by Samantha Downing. Samantha Downing is the author of My Lovely Wife, which I really liked. That was a thriller I really enjoyed. He Started It is about 3 siblings, so it's going to be another thriller. If it's anything like My Lovely Wife, it'll be really dark. So it's about 3 siblings who don't always get along, and they've been keeping this secret since they were children. I love it already. It's a story about lying, a story about murder. It's a story where only one can win. I mean, this has my name written all over it. They also gave me my Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which I've heard so much about, and actually I will definitely be reading next month because my Patreons voted for me to read this. Every month I do a poll where my Patreons get to pick which book they want me to read that month, and this one won by a landslide. I've heard so much about it. My mum has read it, absolutely loved it. We actually did a video together as a family talking about some of the best books we read during lockdown, and she talked about this one, so I'm very intrigued. They gave me The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This one my sister absolutely loves. So this is, I believe, quite a strange book. So it says it's about a woman who's recovering from a breakup and she becomes entranced by an eerily attractive swimmer. I think that swimmer is going to turn out to be like a merman or like a fish person or something. My sister said it was really, really strange, but that she really liked it, so I'm very intrigued. Oh, it says on the back here, it's got laugh out loud hilarity and genuinely hot sex with a merman. Great. Okay, then they gave me Not Forgetting the Whale by John Ironmonger. This is, I've heard of this one. The reason that I had this like on my wish list was because someone said it was relevant because it's about like a global collapse. So it's not about a pandemic, I don't think. I think it's more about like a global financial collapse, but with side effects that are actually kind of similar to the situation that we have been living through. So that sounds relevant to read. As you can see, I started it in the bath the other night. And it begins with a guy washing up naked on a beach in Cornwall, riding on the back of a whale. So great, strong start. And then finally my last birthday present from my parents was The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. So I read a couple of months ago a different book by this author called The Housekeeper and the Professor, which was a 5-star read and I absolutely loved it. This one I have already read and I only liked it okay, unfortunately. I'm not going to talk anymore about it because I've actually like talked in depth about this book in 2 videos already. In the Sims video I chatted away about it, and in my 5-star predictions video I chat on about it, so I will link to both of those below if you want to hear my thoughts on it. I'm not going to repeat them for a 3rd time because anyone who's already seen all the videos will be incredibly bored. Also on my birthday, halfway through the day, a book showed up which wasn't a birthday present. It was a book that I had ordered for myself weeks before and it finally suddenly arrived, so I'm viewing it as like a little birthday present to myself, and that was Of Murder, Muses and Me. So this one I bought from Jacaranda Books. Jacaranda Books are a black owned publisher and I hadn't heard of them before, but they were doing a fundraiser, this Inclusive Indies fundraiser, and our company told us about it, so I donated and then decided to browse their website and bought a ton of books. 2 of them haven't arrived yet. I'm so excited when they do, but this one did and I think it looks brilliant. Again, I talked about this in my 5-star predictions because this is a 5-star prediction for me, but it's like a murder mystery set in London about a best-selling author who's found dead, and our main character is a super fan who has to like solve this murder. All my favourite things thrown into this book, and it's pink. Okay, then my birthday ended, but I just kept shopping. I bought myself the Aosawa Murders by Riku Onda. So this is a mystery about a birthday party on a summer's day in the 70s in Japan when 17 people die at this party. They're all poisoned, and it's a mystery about what happened. Then, inspired by watching a video from Bookish Babe, who I've recently discovered, and she's amazing, I will link to her channel below. She's so much fun to watch, and she's just this incredibly impressive person. She has her own publishing imprint and she works in publishing, and she's just like my new idol, and I was just really like her videos. She's really fun, she's really passionate about books. She has like quite a fun editing style where she'll like put words up on the screen and it's quite funny. Anyway, I really enjoy her. I will link to her, go check her out. But she was talking about this book, The Clapback, Your Guide to Calling Out Racist Stereotypes, and I instantly, like while watching the video, went and bought it because this sounds just brilliant. I've really like made a resolution with myself to be more and more actively anti-racist. Obviously this is something that we should all have been trying to do for a long time, and I have been trying to do for a long time, but I don't know if I've been as active about it as I could have been. I think sometimes in some conversations it's uncomfortable and you don't know what to say, so you kind of just stay quiet because you don't want to agree with the person, whereas actually what you should be doing is actively disagreeing, actively fighting, trying to change their minds, trying to change other people's minds. And I'm not a very persuasive arguer, so I always get uncomfortable and just go quiet, whereas I think reading a book like this will arm me with what I need to never shut up about it. Don't worry, I'm not finished, I still kept buying. So I bought Patsy by Nicole Dennis-Benn because Jessie from Bow Ties and Books was talking about in their video about black queer books. and this one sounded brilliant. It's got bi-representation, which is something I definitely have been looking for more of. It's also about a mother and daughter, and I always love family relationships, and it's about them moving from Jamaica to New York and what they discovered there. So it sounds a bit like kind of what I loved about Americanah, of that journey of somebody moving to the States. Obviously I'm not from the States either, but I'm more familiar with the States than I am with Nigeria or with Jamaica, and I think highlighting those different cultures by having your character move from one country to the other is just something I find really interesting. So I'm excited for this. Oh, that was a lot of talking, but I'm still not done. In last month's Balancing the Books, I said that I had put down for now My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, but we've now moved back, as you can see. Oh, by the way, I didn't say, I'm back in front of my bookcases and back in my home where I live. I'm not with my family anymore. And when we were moving, I was like, it's just one more book to bring back with me, and it's a book that I have now not picked up for an entire month and don't really feel inclined to pick up. So I've officially DNF'd that one and left it behind. Then I reread a book, so this does nothing for my TBR, but I reread Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This was for my Patreon book club, so we had a live show the other day, which was really fun, and got to chat all about one of my favourite books of all time. The next book for the next book club, by the way, is The Farm by Joanne Ramos, which was one of my favourites of last year. So if you haven't joined already, do join. The link will be below. And yeah, I do the book club like every quarter, so I announce the book and then you have 3 months to get to it whenever you want to. So in September, at the end of September, will be the live show for The Farm. Then I hauled If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. It was free. I got it on Kindle Unlimited, which I didn't even know I was signed up for, and I'm no longer. I've now cancelled, but that was helpful. So I got that one because that was actually the book that my patrons had voted for me to read. And I didn't like it at all. I gave it a 2. I've heard so much hype about this book, but I thought it was like, I absolutely loved The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and this felt like just an even more pretentious but less well written version of The Secret History, and also much more predictable. Like, I knew exactly what was happening the whole way through. I don't like Shakespeare. I'm not a fan of Shakespeare, so the fact that the characters were constantly just quoting Shakespeare to each other was irritating, because I get, you know, you can have passions, you can love the theatre, that's great, but I'm sure theatre kids don't literally talk to each other in quotes all the time, and the fact they were Shakespeare and I don't even understand Shakespeare just made me like, I was constantly skim reading all of that. The characters were just ridiculous in general. They were all so pretentious, so unlikable, so unbelievable. I didn't relate to them or believe that they existed in any way. God, what else can I say bad about this book? It's funny, I was messaging Matthew Sharappa while I was reading it and saying that one of the things I hated was that the descriptions of the women were, I was like, I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something about it that to me they were so obviously written by a man. And then Matthew told me that the author, M.L. Rio, is a woman, which I would not have guessed. She also apparently has said some really rude things about not liking YA, which is A, very dismissive, and B, interesting because I actually felt the book read like YA. Again, difficult thing to put your finger on, because what does that really mean, reading like YA? But I just felt like it did, so I don't know why she was being so rude about YA. Are we at the end now? I hauled one more book. This one I hauled from work. This is Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. So this is another short story collection. That's 2 this month, and considering I don't often like them, that's risky. But these ones, I just keep hearing about them. So Ted Chiang wrote a collection called Exhalation, which Obama bloody loves, and that's a good sign, and he also wrote this. And one of these stories is the short story that the movie Arrival was based off, but I haven't seen Arrival, so that means nothing to me, but you know, that's famous. And he apparently writes these like speculative sci-fi but very, very human stories, and that just sounds really interesting. It sounds a bit like, I really enjoyed, what's his name? George something. The guy who wrote Lincoln in the Bardo, what's his name? He also wrote a short story collection called 10th of December, which was all slightly like speculative sci-fi-ish, and I really enjoyed them. George Saunders, I think that's his name. Anyway, this made me think maybe these would be more stories like that, and I did really enjoy those. Whew, that was exhausting. That was so many books. Should I show you again how many books that was? That was this many books, plus all of the ebooks. That's a lot of books. Oh, and then we go on to the fun Sims thing. Okay. If I've been adding up right as we go, I've been writing it down, I think I am now on 48 books on my TBR, which means I have gone up 9. But I had 13 points, so I can still haul 4 more books. That's so exciting. I don't know where I'm going to get the money from to haul these books, but I'm going to do it. I have a little bit of extra YouTube money this month. We're going to do this. So I have 4 books that are really high on my TBR, and I'm going to buy them right now. How exciting. The final books I am hauling right now are The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I've heard so much about this. I've been desperate to read it. I've heard it's a bit like, it's kind of a retelling of the classic book Passing by Nella Larson, which I really enjoyed. And I also enjoyed Voice No Bird by Helen Oyemi, which is also a retelling of Passing with a controversial ending. I've talked about that in a video before. The ending is not great, but I really liked the book up to that point. And I've heard just nothing but wonderful things about The Vanishing Half. I'm also going to haul right now Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. Again, one that people just keep talking about. From what I understand, when I pieced together from reading about it, it's about a young black woman who is the babysitter to this rich white influencer. And in the beginning of the book, she is taking the child that she babysits for to a shop quite late at night and is stopped by a security guard who thinks that she is kidnapping the child. And her boss, the influencer, who's the mother of the child, is really shocked by this, like discovering the racism that she faces. But in trying to kind of right those wrongs, she actually just becomes quite like white feministy and quite kind of centering her own discomfort about racism over Amira, who is the main character's actual experiences. I think that's what it's about. So that sounds definitely really interesting and something that would be very useful for me to read as a white person who does feel like I so want to make things better, but it's so easy to get caught up in putting yourself at the centre and your own feelings and discomfort and shame and guilt and everything at the centre, which is actually not helpful. So sounds like it'd be a useful book for me to read. Then I'm going to haul Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I have only read Final Girls by him. He's written quite a few. And I liked Final Girls okay. I mean, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't like absolutely love it. But I've heard that the books just keep getting better and better, and I haven't read anything he's written since. And Lock Every Door is the one that like everyone's been talking about. I think it's about an apartment building or a hotel. It definitely sounded, when I heard about it, like a kind of claustrophobic setting where there's all these rules. I think our main person is apartment sitting, but there's all these rules about it. And something creepy is going to happen. I don't know, I'm just excited. And then finally, the fourth book I am hauling right now is The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. So this is one I've had my eye on for absolutely years. And recently I did a video where I asked you guys to tell me books that you thought I'd be interested in, or books that you thought would be 5-star predictions for me actually. And a couple of you mentioned The Immortalists. I will be doing like a full proper video with the results of what you guys said, but that was the first one that I was like, yes. I'm so glad someone mentioned it because I really wanted to read that. It's about the concept of like knowing the date that you're gonna die and how would that change your life. So a little bit like They Both Die at the End, I guess, but like an adult version. It's set in the 70s or the late 60s in New York, and I think it's about these siblings who all find out the day they're gonna die. You know me and siblings, love that shit. So that's 4 extra books I hauled. Oh my god, so now what? I don't even want to know what my TBR number is right now. It has ballooned, but it's allowed to because I did so well at my Sims challenge that, you know what, whatever, free pass. Hopefully in July I'll do loads of reading. There is the reading rush happening, so I am planning to do a lot of reading. Okay, well that's it for me. I'm going to put all of these books back on the shelf now. It's going to take forever because there's bloody tons of them, but leave me a comment letting me know what you guys have been reading this month, what you've hauled this month, if anyone's been doing similar projects to balancing the books. I know a few of you have done like your own spins on this and I always love that, so do link me your videos below and I'll go and check them out. And I will see you soon. Goodbye!